Hey internet friends, this video is about the blurred lines between Hollywood, entertainment, news media, and the government, citing a handful of different examples I've provided over the years. Some folks just want to live their lives under the ignorance is bliss banner, and I can't really blame them after working 8+ hours a day, 5 days a week. Who doesn't just want to go home and relax and mindlessly watch Netflix? But one of the biggest wake-up calls is when individuals begin to question their programming, specifically their television programming. Asking questions like, what are they trying to normalize here? How is public discourse being guided by the news media? And who the heck are these talking heads peddling every agenda imaginable from the little black box in my living room? In the first part of this video, we'll cover how governments used entertainment to control the masses and how corporations took note, using the same methods to sell a product. Then we'll cover childhood entertainment, starting with Disney, and the forces behind our favorite family movies. Next, we'll tackle cultural creation and cultural moderation, showcasing some interesting government ties between news media and Hollywood. So let's begin, shall we? The father of psychoanalysis was born in the Austrian Empire in 1856 to Eastern European Jewish parents. It was in Vienna that Sigmund Freud researched and experimented on the human mind, concluding that man was the most ferocious animal in existence. And tucked inside the minds of all of these animals were primitive sexual and aggressive forces. Forces that had the power to unleash widespread chaos, and even the potential to topple governments. While Freud warned that governments had set loose these dangerous forces with World War I, Freud's American nephew, Edward Bernays, had been employed to keep the war drums beating. President Woodrow Wilson needed Americans to get on board with the war machine, and he turned to propagandists to do just that, to convince Americans to join the fight under the guise of spreading democracy across all of Europe, so that a hopeful future might unfold, one where individuals across the world could experience good old American freedom. But Bernays wasn't too keen on the propagandist title. He claimed, ironically, that the Germans had tainted the term, and thus he reinvented it, emerging as the father of public relations. You see, Bernays had witnessed firsthand how powerful propaganda was at promoting war. So for his next act, Bernays decided to use public relations, to promote peace. How, you might ask, did Bernays execute such a noble deed? Well, his uncle, who, by the way, hated humans, especially Americans, had some interesting ideas on human nature, and Bernays decided it was time to weaponize those ideas. For peace, of course. For peace. American corporations emerged even more powerful after the First World War, and in order to maintain their cash flow, and in other words, their influence, business owners realized they needed to keep their workers in the factories to increase their production. And of course, there is no supply without demand. That's why Bernays' big business clients hired him to figure out exactly what motivated the human mind, so corporations could better appeal to the masses. The year was 1928 when the president of the American Tobacco Company looked to Bernays to increase sales, providing Bernays with an opportunity to conduct an experiment of sorts. This was a time when women smoking in public was stigmatized, but both Bernays and his client knew an untapped market when they saw one. Bernays employed psychoanalysis, learning that cigarettes symbolized the penis, therefore male sexual power, and he figured out that if he could connect smoking cigarettes to the idea of challenging male sexual power, he could sell a pack of smokes to both genders. Everyone was a winner, but their lungs were not. So at the Easter Day parade, Bernays set up a huge publicity stunt. He'd already tipped off the press and supplied them with their new propaganda piece, public relations phrase, Torches of Freedom, which the press would then capture when a group of paid-off debutantes posing as suffragettes lit up their cigarettes in the middle of the parade, making the single act of igniting a torch of freedom a gesture of female empowerment, wrapped up in one stinky PR package meant to render emotion from all who might look upon it, skyrocketing tobacco sales and forever linking human desire and feelings with products. Because it's not like the actual act of becoming a human chimney made women any freer, but it sure made them feel like it. And with this realization, Bernays felt confident that his tactics could emotionally manipulate the masses to purchase product on the basis of want, not need. And all these dangerous primitive forces his uncle was droning on about were made even more docile through Bernays' manipulation of habits and opinions. Bernays had successfully remixed the Romans' bread and circuses. The average Joe was so occupied, in fact, that most didn't even realize a new mentality, shaped by corporate appeal, was binding and guiding America, creating a clear path for a new elite to control the masses through psychological techniques, forming a grand illusion of this thing we now call democracy. The lines between corporations and governments aren't just blurred anymore. They barely exist at all. And just when people start to take notice that something isn't quite right, another distraction gets ruled out. Probably some breaking news headline on a polarizing issue into which well-meaning people throw their energy. Social media then becomes weaponized, dividing people into virtual armies that endlessly attack each other. White versus black, men versus women, Muslims versus Christians, gay versus straight, Antifa versus the alt-right. It's also draining, so why don't you just sit back, relax, and watch a little Netflix? A company founded by none other than the grandnephew of Edward Bernays. The first leg of Walt's career seemed to be marked by creative desire, glimpses of success, his brother Roy's business choices, personal tragedy, and a propensity towards bankruptcy. But all that changed with the Second World War. Revealed in documents reopened through the Freedom of Information Act, prior to the official beginning of World War II, Walt was recruited by the FBI to spy on Hollywood as a paid asset. Walt even had underlings who reported to him on official spy business. Walt expanded from an individual asset to establishing the Walt Disney Company as a government contractor. And the United States military parked themselves at Disney Studios only one day after Pearl Harbor. His studios cranked out instructional military films, war bond advertisements, and endless propaganda for the war machine. Mickey played a huge role in World War II, with his likeness painted across aircrafts to lift the spirits of the men fighting. Mickey helped children feel safer during the war, with a line of issued gas masks resembling the face of the mouse, making them seem less threatening. One of the most influential people working in journalism today is Anderson Cooper, a member of one of the most powerful families in America, the Vanderbilts. Anderson Cooper's great-grandfather was a robber baron and industrial titan, making his early fortune from ferries, steamship lines, railroads, and stock manipulations. While Anderson Cooper was in college at Yale University, famous for their Skull and Bones Society, he spent 2 summers working for the CIA at their headquarters in Langley, Virginia, something that he had not spoken about publicly until the word got out in 2006, when he addressed the accusations as true but insisted on downplaying his time there, saying that while it was a nice summer job, he didn't make a career out of working for the CIA. While Anderson Cooper is hardly the only mainstream journalist with CIA ties, that's not really important here. What is important is what those ties mean and have historically meant for prominent journalists. Back in the 1950s, at the beginning of the Cold War, the CIA kicked off an operation known as Project Mockingbird, which they utilized to surveil and recruit journalists amongst corporate media outlets to advance their geopolitical agenda and ultimately boost their fight against communism. Back in 1977, Carl Bernstein, a former Washington Post reporter, published a Rolling Stone cover story titled, "The CIA and the Media, How America's Most Powerful News Media Worked Hand in Glove with the Central Intelligence Agency and Why the Church Committee Covered It Up." Bernstein's investigation involved obtaining CIA files that recorded collaborative efforts with 400 American journalists over the last 25 years, who had secretly carried out assignments for the Central Intelligence Agency. So what could these journalists have been used for? To promote war, geopolitical agendas, and social engineering? How much of what these journalists have reported has been actual news, and how much of it has been a CIA script? One relayed for a very specific purpose. And when will we find out that Project Mockingbird never really ended? Perhaps we've learned all that we need to from Weinstein, the fall guy. Perhaps the answers we seek remain hidden by those who have been covering up for him for decades. Let's take a look at Harvey Weinstein's most outspoken accuser, Rose McGowan, who recently got banned from Twitter for taking aim at one of Hollywood's darlings, Ben Affleck, accusing him of knowing about Weinstein's behavior for years, and also alleging that he lied about doing something about Weinstein's behavior. Additionally, McGowan called Affleck's longtime buddy, Matt Damon, a spineless profiteer who stays silent. But are Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, and Harvey Weinstein really all just spineless Hollywood perverts? Both Ben Affleck and Matt Damon were no-name actors prior to Good Will Hunting. But here's a picture of them with former President of the United States, Bill Clinton, the day Good Will Hunting was released to the general public. Distributed by none other than Weinstein's Miramax Films. Also of note, Damon's character in Good Will Hunting is being recruited by the NSA. Could it be that Affleck and Damon are a little more connected than their humble, struggling actor beginnings let on? The answer is yes. Absolutely, a million times, yes. Finding Your Roots, a program that aired on PBS, looked into Ben Affleck's roots and revealed that his story of being a middle-class guy from Boston, raised by a single mother, was a bit of a misleading tale. Barely mentioned on the show was Affleck's grandmother, Elizabeth Roberts Shaw, who married a guy she met at college by the name of O'Brien Bolt, whose best man was Tom Braden, a man who worked for the OSS, which was like a really early version of the CIA. Braden then held a prominent role in the CIA, specializing in using art and film as a means to spread propaganda. Braden even snagged Ben Affleck's grandma a job at the CIA front known as the Museum of Modern Art, working alongside her. Ben Affleck's mama, Chris Ann Bolt, wasn't just any single mama. She attended Harvard and worked alongside the offspring of other CIA spooks. Which brings us full circle to Ben Affleck. After No Name Ben Affleck watched the premiere of his not yet popular film Good Will Hunting with then President Bill Clinton at Camp David, he played a CIA analyst in the film The Sum of All Fears. Reported in The Guardian, there was a real CIA agent on the set, advising the actors as they shot the movie. That same CIA liaison went on to advise the set of Alias, the star of which is Jennifer Garner, Ben Affleck's former wife. Basically, all the women in Ben Affleck's family are connected to the Central Intelligence Agency. And we haven't even gotten to spineless profiteer Matt Damon, who has played CIA or NSA-related characters in Good Will Hunting, 4 Jason Bourne films, The Good Shepherd, and Syriana. Though Matt Damon has a similar origin story to Ben Affleck, he presents himself as a middle-class guy from Cambridge, who happened to attend Harvard, where he became a member of the elite Delphic Club. Even though he was supposedly just a middle-class theater kid who missed a bunch of class time due to pursuing film roles. Even going on record as saying that he was yanked out of class to pursue these roles, as though he had no say in the matter. There's an excellent essay I have listed down below that details and sources all of this information about how Ben Affleck and Matt Damon were anything but struggling actors from middle-class families. They were both born from elite families with a spiderweb of connections to the CIA. Do you reckon these connections were severed when they made it big in Hollywood? Together, Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, and Harvey Weinstein make quite the trifecta. Hollywood serves as the conduit through which the United States government promotes its propaganda. Harvey and his brother Bob founded Miramax Films, which Disney bought in 1993. During World War II, Walt Disney Studios created 75 training films for the military, and it's documented that the U.S. Army took over Disney's studio space during this time, and they never really left. Consider the programming that Disney, as well as all of Hollywood, cranks out. Consider the propaganda that Matt Damon and Ben Affleck have been a part of. So what do you think, internet friends? Is there something more to our TV programming than just a simple means of escapism after a hard day at work? Let me know. You know I always look forward to your comments. Thank you so much for watching, subscribing, and supporting my channel on Patreon. Bye!